Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
You have escaped again.
My benefactor has asked me not to tell you too much.
No.
I understand what actually happened. You made a choice. You left us behind. You don't belong to yourself anymore, Jaxon.
I've realized that.
You belong to me. Tyler Foone's head was being devoured by K-Pack.
You know how Howie got the failsafe warmed up? He's gonna use it to bring Foone back to life.
Hey, why don't you go and watch your stepdad kill your mum and dad, and go, have a regular life? Death is a mercy sometimes, mate. You of all people should know that. People don't just start shagging their best friend and coworker who they see every day and live with because they're bored and muddy and it's bloody well convenient, trust me.
Wait, fuck, holy shit, in love with Jaxon, fuck, did I really just think that? Electricity sticks, specifically for killing Tyler Foone. Phil, I broke it.
You can take the other one, but don't group it until you're sure you got it.
And as she spoke, he finally stopped shaking and collapsed into a firm embrace, burying his forehead into her shoulders while she stroked his hair.
These are the Beam Chronicles, with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 2, Compromise. Chapter 14, Jaxon Teaque.
I was embarrassed and slightly afraid of what happened to me on the Datweiler Bridge 3 days ago, and enough so that I didn't want to discuss it. Conveniently, the people who needed to understand already did completely without me having to talk about it, and the people who didn't need to understand didn't care at all. For them, there were other, more vital details of that day that they needed to focus on. Charlie and I hugged. It used to be tabloid garbage, fanboy/girl blog fodder, and a paparazzi wet dream to catch us engaged in any sort of display of affection. We expended a lot of effort seeming friendly, but disinterested in each other romantically in order to maintain our secret, keep Cranston or Prophet from getting suspicious. But what happened on the bridge kind of blew that effort up pretty permanently. Images of her pressing our heads together, stroking my hair, then firmly embracing me, flooded every magazine, newspaper, and social media website. Hardly an hour went by without somebody asking me for comment on our relationship. I maintained it was purely friendly and platonic, but no matter how strongly I insisted, the pictures of us on the Datweiler were more convincing. Overwhelmingly so. Which made sense because I was bad at lying, and those pictures captured possibly the truest, rawest moment of my entire life. A fiery, highly emotional display for both of us. I think it was necessarily intense. I was that far gone, and that it required the pull it did to get me back really demonstrated how deeply I was lost inside of myself. I would have followed Charlie off of the end of creation, and all she had to do was ask me, not even nicely. Yet on that bridge, she had to drag me back, coax me into reality again with an overt display of passion. Scary, but again, ostensibly not as scary to everyone else as it was elating that we made physical contact. Anyway, the world only cared that Charlie and I were maybe a couple when they should have cared how close I was to losing my grip. But it was the typical sort of blind ignorance that frustrated me all the time, so I don't know why I expected any better. And hell, neither of those were even my greatest concern. Leper, who admittedly the general public couldn't really get too hyped about because they had no way of knowing this whole mess was the work of a reoccurring anomaly. Nobody outside of Beam knew Leper was attached to the bombing, and nobody outside of Beam knew that Sydney had busted him before the interstate fight either. Thus, it was big yet private news for Charlie, Sydney, and me that this whole ordeal was actually Leper Round 3, and while we were committed to taking every precaution necessary to avoid Round 4, we thought we were pretty much already doing that anyway, so with Dungeoneer contribution to the effort still at a firm 0, we had to start tapping weird alternate resources, fringe benefits, shots in the dark to prevent a future breakout, or at least to get a heads up if one were to occur. I tapped one resource in particular that Charlie and Sydney would probably not understand.
I can't see him, you know.
Tyler said after I finished explaining the situation at our 27th Monday meeting.
Like you said, he's the first cell. way on down the road, soundproof lockups. Hell, I don't even know what he looks like. Anybody talking to him would be hidden from me.
I know. I'm not really optimistic you'll be much help, but we're trying every angle we have here. Just in case, if you happen to see anything even slightly suspicious, just pull a tube out of your back. He frowned a bit.
Why? What good will that do?
Well, I already have medical pushing your alerts to my earpiece, and if Leper has taught me anything, it's never take out my earpiece. So when you yank a tube, they'll notify me. I'll come down here and hopefully catch Howie or whoever's doing it red-handed.
Yeah, and then what?
I'd pluck you back in if you helped me, Tyler. I tried not to sound too offended that he'd doubt me, as I reassured him.
Not what I meant. I meant, after you find Prophet springing the beastie, he'll just kill you, yeah? You'd be better to take the heads up, stomp Leper when he breaches the surface before he can surprise you or stir up trouble. Leave me to medical. Maybe even a second ride on the failsafe.
I snorted in good humor. I never told Tyler about the similarity between us being the only two users of Howie's failsafe so far. The curious thought crossed my mind, but hardly seemed relevant to bring out now. Or within my capacity to talk about. That day when I killed myself, the day I let Lindsay Flair fire a laser into my chest and melt my rib cage, the day I left all the people I loved behind just to escape, was a day I hated to relive. How I managed to sell myself on it was beyond me. I could never leave what I had behind now, not at any cost. I didn't know if that was a bad thing or a great thing. Look, Foone, I'm not just gonna let you die in the process of tipping me off.
Well, I ain't gonna let you die in the process of responding to my tip. You got a lot more to live for than me, mate. I'll go out giving you the warning. No big deal. Some sort of honor going out as a signal flare, don't you think? Die a tattle. Sounds like the cheeky, wry sort of mischief I love best.
I shook my head. You know, I'll never get over the cavalier way you just brandish death around. It's like it's not even a thing.
'Cause it's not a thing.
Not to be rude, but it's the most terrifying and defining aspect of the human condition, you deranged friggin' idiot. He just cackled at me, and then sputtered into coughing and reached backward for his cot to sit down on it before he hit the floor. As I'd grown so accustomed to doing whenever he started laughing, I drug the bed up behind him and eased him down onto it with my telekinesis, and when his fit was finished, he subtly and sincerely nodded in gratitude.
You're not scared of death, Jaxon.
Sure I am.
No, don't lie. I can see it in your eyes, mate.
Tyler, only a fool's not scared of death.
Nah. Oh, well, actually, yeah, maybe at first. You get over it eventually, though, right? Maybe it's 2 seconds before you pass on. Maybe it's a month before. Well, the doc tells you the shit he can do for you. But eventually, everybody stops being scared of dying once you get close. At least when it comes, the cruelty finally stops, you know?
I smirked at his occasional tendency for approximating wisdom and pretended to be writing something down, even though I'd mostly finished this evaluation like weeks ago.
Then there's the wankers like me, who got to that part, accepted death, welcomed it, and then woke up the next morning to see wheels still turning, knives still cutting jagged through the meat, and the past still ripping me the same. Fucks with your mind, don't it? Flicking the lights on and off like that. That's why I joke about it. You gotta laugh, so you don't keep crying, or worse.
I understood what he meant firsthand. Knowing I was dead, free, and clean made it very difficult to face all the grime again, but at least unlike him, I had something to live for once I came back. I couldn't imagine finding eternal peace and getting ripped away from it without Charlie and Sydney and the rest, my family, to make it worth drudging on. I couldn't imagine letting go, then opening my eyes to be back in my tiny little dungeon lockup, alone, dry, wasted, and meaningless. Feeling bad for Foone was all right, I recalled. Pity was fine. A thought suddenly occurred to me, out of the blue. What if the failsafe fixed more than just his melted skull? Being failsafed could have stimulated Foone's transformation from unsalvageable refuse to whatever the hell he was now, like the most insane form of electroshock therapy, like a computer reboot. Maybe it kickstarted his rehabilitation, made him born again. Maybe in the process of revitalizing him, it fixed whatever chemical imbalance he had in his brain. Hell, his head was gone. He grew an entirely new brain. It struck me as relevant because It was the first time I'd thought of a legitimate, rational excuse to believe something I desperately wanted to believe for months now, but was up to this point too afraid to admit. If Tyler Foone were truly repaired, he could one day join Ava. I could see it within myself to give him the opportunity, not just pity, genuine forgiveness. My pen hovered over that checkbox, lingered there as I contemplated that maybe today was the day I gave up the grudge. He'd die just to warn me about a fourth leper attack. That wasn't worth nothing. Was it worth giving him my approval, passing him onward to Sydney and Charlie? No, not yet. I promised Murphy and Charlie would never agree to him anyway once he got to her, so it was irrelevant. Might as well save them the hassle of dealing with each other at all, but I was inching closer to absolving him, and it was almost more exciting than it was disturbing.
Say, Jackson, you ever take a second, look around where you're at, and wonder how the fuck you got here?
I've forgotten that he was just sitting there, apparently privately quarreling with some deep history throughout my own internal struggle regarding his freedom. I smiled at him, checking the reject box definitely, and stuffing the papers back under my arms. Not today. Perhaps soon, but not yet. Yeah, I do. Pretty frequently, actually. He exhaled mightily, like he was too exhausted to stay awake any longer, like he'd resolved that now was the right time to articulate some feelings he'd been stewing on forever. He'd played my therapist plenty of times. I could take a stab at it once, even though his psychosis was much more heavyset than mine. Let's hear it, Foone. What's on your mind? He sadly smirked and clapped his hands together.
Well, it's just that I've been doing that exclusively, wondering how I got here for 3 years, Teaque. 3 years. I'm 24, so that's what, about 10% of my life.
12 and a half. I sheepishly corrected him.
Right. 12.5% of my life here on Earth, just trying to retrace the steps that got me into this pit. 3 years of solitary self-reflection, and the longer I do it, the more I look around, let the fog dissipate, the deeper I long for a second chance, and the more I know I don't deserve it at the same time. The harder I reach for the carrot, the farther it's out my reach. You know it, I know it. This is me now, right? We're chummy enough to call it what it is. I ain't kidding now, not really.
Tyler, come on. That's not... I had no sort of honest comfort to offer him. He was suddenly agitated, shaking harder than usual, squeezing the edge of his cot until his fingers turned white. Then he glared at me, snarled through pursed lips.
So then, what the fuck am I doing here, huh? What sort of game is the devil playing with me now? Keeping me so close to the edge so I can peek on into hell, anticipate its fire, just not quite burn, just singe, simmer slowly. Why give me the hope? And yeah, I don't deserve a lick of fairness, however you want to butcher it, but I've already scraped my way to the finish line, accepted my eternal fate, and then I had to start over. I died already. That weren't enough. So what is it then, mate? Huh? Tell me. Answer me. I'm sick of looking for it on my own. What the fuck does a goddamn soul gotta do to take a fucking bullet with some fucking dignity round here?
Again, I could offer no solace. It was another answer I simply didn't have. Where was it coming from? Maybe he'd seen me wavering over which box to check, but there was no way, not from in there. It was something else that was stirring this up in him, something more profound and simple, more poignant, just the mere topic of death. It was taunting him, the sweet release. Tyler Foone had nothing to live for. He didn't want to join Ava. He just wanted to die. I remembered a time when I thought I had that very same choice, and I tried to make the same decision he wanted to, albeit for entirely different purposes, and I failed just as surely as he'd failed. I pitied him so emphatically, I sympathized like he couldn't even know.
You know, I'm almost to terms with myself for killing me wife. Her cocksucking lover, the Vasquez chap, all the prison guards back in London, hell, the strangers on the street 2.5 years ago, I'll accept those. I'm almost to the point where I know in me head I did them. I admit that it happened. I admit it was a fuck-up even. I'm actually ashamed of them, Jaxon. I want to go back. I want to undo them. You'd be surprised how long that takes, how watershed that is. You probably don't consider it much significant at all.
Step 1, right? Admit you have a problem?
Yeah? What's step 2 then?
I think it's actually acknowledging a higher power that can help you overcome it. You found Jesus yet, Foone?
He ain't here, lad. He ain't nowhere near me, and who could hold that against him? Not like anyone's itching to get particularly close.
I had to say something, do something to make him feel better, but no matter how deeply I racked my brain for the solution, nothing seemed competent to convince him against what he was saying. And I respected Tyler too much to pummel him with inadequate consolations. I liked him too much to present him with solutions that weren't really solutions.
I think maybe, just maybe, of all the mass murdering shitholes in the history of the universe, I'm the one with enough power to put me in the unique position to, from some systematic utilitarian view of humanity, make any bit of good on it, you know? Like maybe I'll start thinking, maybe if I save 10 souls for every one I took, that's square with the universe, eh? That'll balance it out, even if I can't take back what I did. If there's just a chance my net contribution to humanity was neutral, even just scarcely bad, maybe I could get by on that chance. Marginally detrimental to mankind. I'd hang my hat on that all day, mate. And yeah, nobody will ever love me again, or possibly even like me still. I'll take it. I'll cash in all me chips for that, but then...
He clutched his forehead with both hands, relentlessly shaking as he tiptoed along that precipice of death. I couldn't even think that maybe possibly there was a chance it was all for show. I couldn't disbelieve him if I wanted to. Sabrina?
Yeah. How fucking cliche, right? It always comes back to the girl, because I can't come to terms with her, Jaxon. I can't figure it out. How it happened, what the fuck I did. I think about it, or I just try to, and I remember the day that I did it. I remember the instant that I killed her, and I know that it was me what did it, because I remember it from my own perspective, yeah? With my own eyes. I remember killing Sabrina. Obviously I did it. Obviously I killed her. I saw myself do it. I remember, but I still can't believe that I did. I feel like it came from somewhere else, not me. And I know it's fucked. I know it's insane. But it really honestly feels like I let her go. Like I didn't even kill her. I just decided she shouldn't stay here. And then somebody else used me to put her somewhere else where it was warmer and sweeter and it's looty. But I think the reason it's so fucked in me head is that's the one that tipped the scale. That's the ones before her, I can justify. I can rationalize it. It's net positive. It's worthwhile. But once I pulled that trigger, once I took her, that was it. It doesn't matter what I do or who I help, how many, not after that. I'm damned, Jaxon. I'm damned straight to hell, irredeemably, for what I did to Sabrina, and I don't deserve the second chance I so desperately want to make it right because I didn't give her one. Maybe it was all, I don't know, balanceable by some grander scheme. If I hadn't killed the girl, I could have come back before that. Now after I killed her, I'm just darkness forever. I guess I answered my own question, huh? Why I can't just take the bullet? I don't deserve one. Whatever hell's got for me, this is worse. Living with this is what I'm intending to do. I might just laugh about it, I guess.
It was one too many times, one too many failed attempts to cry. I'd seen his desert tear ducts spasm and wheeze pretty rarely throughout our 27 meetings, but frequently enough that this one was too much. If I gave it a second thought, I probably still would have done it, but if I gave it a third, I might have hesitated. I didn't do either. I just wimped my ID card at the panel beside his cell, scanned it, jammed the button to raise the glass, and I stepped over the line into his cell.
Jaxon?
He gasped, sunken in, bloodshot eyes wide, with surprise as he started to get off the cot. "Don't get up," I firmly instructed him. "Don't even move, I'll rip you to shreds. Do you understand? Stay perfectly still." And he did, motionless and stunned, then cautiously asked,
What are you doing, mate?
There was a crackly brokenness in his voice that I'd always attributed to the bad sound quality of the intercom. This was the first time we'd actually spoken face to face since the day he and Fly almost killed all of us. He was one big drink away from that level of hurricane. I reminded myself of that again to make sure I wasn't making a huge mistake. One big drink spelled catastrophe. But a small one couldn't hurt. I telekinetically pulled a water bottle out of my bag and pushed it into his cell. He watched it with eager eyes and bated breath as I lowered it inches in front of his feet, but he didn't flinch from his position on the cot. I stepped out, scanned my card, and shut the glass again, re-engaging the intercom so I could hear him speak.
What do I do with it?
He quietly asked me, not looking up from the prize I'd left on the ground, still frozen, clutching the end of his bed. "Whatever you want, Foone. Drink it, absorb it, blast the walls with it. I don't care. 16 ounces isn't enough for you to do anything destructive."
Yeah, it is.
He sounded so detached, but sure. Like from experience, he knew that I was making a mistake, like he was advising me against it. "Okay, fine, maybe it is, but not when I'm standing here watching you. And before I leave, I want to see it gone. In the meantime, I guess I'm just trusting you."
But why?
And he blinked his eyes up to meet mine. Again, I recognized the look of a man desperately trying to cry. I don't really know, Tyler. I wanted to give it to you." And he nodded slowly, like he understood when I didn't, creakily finding his feet and stepping over to the bottle, making his way up to the glass, feebly pressing his fingers against it. I did the same. Again, quite unsure for what reason.
Thank you, Teaque.
I said nothing again, so he went on.
I want to tell you, you don't know half of my story. But you're the closest thing I've had to a friend in my entire life, and I know to someone as loved as you, that's really fucking pathetic, but...
Foone, come on. Don't make it sentimental. It's just water. Drink, man. Let me get you out of your own head, distract you for a few minutes. Isn't that all we're doing here anyway? Come on, show me a few tricks. He smiled softly and nodded again, then grabbed the bottle I was hovering beside his head. Cap cracked off because I didn't trust his strength to do that on his own. Tyler's hand trembled as he poured the water over his face, closing his eyes like he'd spent years in a cave but was stepping into the sunlight again for the first time. Each drop would splash against his forehead, then instantly dissolve into his skin, staining it a deep blue at the point of impact. The color slowly dispersed, rippled down the length of his torso and limbs, replenishing the dried-up scabs and scars and cracks that ran all over his wrinkly, desiccated body. It wasn't enough to make him fully blue, not like he was 2.5 years ago, not even like he was on the day that we met, but the tint was undeniable, if subtle. He took a few deep breaths, peacefully allowing his body to stop its constant quivering, and on his face was a look of sudden, intense relief, an ounce of peace amongst a lifetime of confusion. He stretched his arms out wide, and from the very tip of his longest finger came a thin, wispy stream of water. I watched it slowly creep backward, around and around his arm in a tight spiral until it hit his shoulder. And then the stream popped over his head in a high arch, landing on the opposite shoulder where it again spun around his other arm like the stripe of a candy cane, culminating at his longest finger on that hand. And a single line of dark blue, like a blurry ink stain, ran smoothly across his chest, through his body, back to the start. A self-sustaining aquatic circuit, around, over, and through his body. The display was breathtaking, tranquil, and beautiful in its balanced simplicity. I didn't know you could do stuff like this, Foone. I breathlessly commented as the flow continued, out one finger, around, over, around, in the other, and through. I thought you just shot it out like a cannon and then he couldn't manipulate it anymore.
That's best for fighting, isn't it?
He gently remarked, not opening his eyes. I recognized the level of focus it took to construct such an intricate display. I myself would struggle to accomplish what he was doing.
The pretty stuff like this might well have distracted you, I guess. Wouldn't do much good to put on a fountain for Charlie Shade, though, right? You'd kick my ass either way.
I was still too taken aback by the startlingly gorgeous demo to realize he'd broken Rule 1. At least I'd finally done something to put his mind at ease. Foone was the last thing on my schedule for the day. After I was done with him, I went up to my apartment, kicked off my shoes, flung myself onto the couch. Not excessively exhausted by Equalizer standards, yet weary enough to fall asleep were I so inclined, but I didn't. Because I knew what would be coming next, I knew my night was just getting started.
So I read on like 15 websites today
Charlie said as she grouped into my apartment, straddling me on the couch.
that you think we have a strictly platonic, friendly relationship.
She lowered her face close to my ear and bit it, then whispered,
Which is really too bad, because I'm feeling a little lonely tonight.
"Oh yeah? Well dang, I guess I could at least try to help you out with that problem."
Oh, Jaxon, you do that for me?
"Sure, what are friends for?" I slapped her on the ass and she laughed out loud, then started kissing me. During that, Tyler Foone was the farthest thing from my mind until she paused to bring him up directly.
You know, you spent a long time with Foone today, JT. Doesn't he know that I need some attention too?
She was joking, but he did actually make me leave to be with her. Was that irony? I could never tell. Yeah, sorry, he loves talking. Get him going on specific subjects, it's hard to get him to stop.
Right. Murdering children, that kind of thing. I bet he just blabbers for days.
Yeah. She conveniently did not detect my discomfort with her slandering him, diving tongue first back into my mouth. Abruptly, she came up for air again.
Oh, shit. That reminds me. Hold on.
She grouped away and grouped right back a few seconds later in the same position as she'd left, with her legs spread across my body, only this time she was holding the electromace. Damn, I smirked, rubbing my finger down the circumference of the handle. What are we doing with this?
Oh, gross. Ew. Honestly, ew.
Oh, come on. Like, you haven't said things 1,000 times lewder than that.
I have, but it's nastier when it comes from you. It's like there's a cringe multiplier when you say shit like that. It's like a baby smoking a cigarette.
Sorry. Anyway, what'd you want to show me?
You remember what this bad boy's for?
She asked, wiggling the mace a bit in one hand. The electro mace. Duh, it's Phil's weapon for beating Foone. Oh, hey, you grouped it. Is it still functional?
Check it out.
She grinned, then began her lightning-fast but elaborate combat demonstration. To the untrained eye, someone who'd met Charlie once, it would have looked like complete chaos mixed with some unfathomably good luck, but I knew it was all super well planned out, coordinated, too quick for me to really follow every step of the dance. I was better than I used to be, and probably better than anyone at anticipating her next move. It was almost like I could feel it coming, this subtle but profound sensation, like a cold wind blowing up the hairs in the back of my neck in the direction she was regrouping. I turned my head just in time for her to reappear, spinning around or swinging the electromace over her head as arcs of electricity shot out of it. Then she'd vanish and then regroup across the room, launch a fast barrage of attacks against some invisible target, then group to a different location, or she'd leave it, the mace falling in place, group off to God knows where, Mexico maybe, then regroup to catch it before it hit the ground. It was all in all 20 seconds before she stopped, frustratedly flicking the switch to turn it on over and over again, then kneeing it a few times to shake it back into function. You group it wrong? I asked.
I don't think so. It's 6 is all right. Oh, it's out of juice, I guess.
She finally realized, leaning it against the chair and then flopping into that same chair sideways.
Phil said we only got a few shocks out of it before it needs to be charged, but hey, I can group the electromace now. What do you think?
Impressive, extremely impressive, Charlie.
Thanks, bud.
Her smile was, without exception, my favorite thing in the world. If I could freeze time forever just looking at it, I probably would. And for a little while, as we watched each other, I got excited that maybe I had. She blushed, then glanced back down at the mace, resting a finger on top of the handle and rotating it on the ground.
Actually, it only took me like 2 days to get it down. I've been ignoring it for quite a while, bigger issues, but once we found out how he's leaving dungeon doors unlocked, I figured it'd be worth adding it to the repertoire, just in case.
Smart thinking. But I doubt Prophet would let Foone out. That would spoil his bigger picture for him.
Right. As if that's progressing at all. Hey, next time you talk to Tyler, maybe I'll come with. I'll bring this, and if he gets too chatty...
She hoisted the electromace back up, held it at an arm's length, shook it to simulate a shock, and made an accompanied buzzing noise, softly chuckling as she returned it to the ground. But I was too distraught to laugh. The fact was, Prophet's plans for Tyler were progressing, and I could never bring Charlie to a Foone meeting. I could never let her see the fragile stability of our friendship. I hated it, keeping such a big thing from her. I didn't want anything between Charlie and me. I wanted to be perfectly honest with her. We'd never talked about Foone before. So until now, it wasn't really a big deal, but I resolved to tell her everything. Maybe she'd surprise me with her reaction, maybe not. Either way, watching her smile, I couldn't bear lying to her about it.
Anyway, let's bone now.
She exclaimed, slamming her hands onto the arms of the chair and bolting upright. Actually, Charlie, before we do, can I talk to you about Foone for a minute?
Yeah, sure. What about him?
Well, just, promise me you'll try to keep an open mind about it. All right, this conversation is like, you may not like it, but I've thought really hard about what I'm about to say.
Open mind. Got it. You can tell me anything, JT. You know that.
And I did. She seemed earnest enough, so I plunged ahead. All right. I rubbed the corners of my mouth and clapped my hands together as I sat up. I guess I'm just like I'm closer to passing Foone than you probably think.
Oh, yeah? Okay, well, any chance you could actually hold off on that for like 2 more weeks? I'm sure it's probably tough. You're probably fed up with listening to him, but Sydney took the under on how long you'd last, so it's $10,000 on the line if you quit now.
Sure, Charlie, for you, I'll wait. And in fairness to Sid and the integrity of the bet, it wasn't going to happen that soon anyway. But listen, the thing of it is, I'm not considering passing him because I'm sick of talking to him. I kind of like him.
Say what now?
I know it's hard to comprehend, but I think I sort of forgive him. Some part of me, not even an overwhelmingly large majority part of me, but some part of me wants to give him a second chance.
Huh.
She chewed the nail of her thumb, then glanced at it, chewed it some more.
Is it maybe the part of you that's a big, gullible fucking idiot?
Nice. Way to stay open-minded all of 14 seconds, Charlie.
You don't get to choose to forgive him, you know. For the things that he did to you, fine. If you want to be a schmuck and believe his phony remorse, by all means, that's your prerogative, but not for the rest of it. Not for his wife and her kid, me, everyone else. You can't forgive him for that. That's not your place.
But it's your place to hold it against him forever.
I'm not saying that.
You don't even know the whole story, all right? He's ashamed of it. He's guilty. He wants to atone.
He's lying.
I don't think he is.
Listen, I'm trying. I really am, Jackson, but it's Tyler Foone. Of all the cocksucking lowlifes in the world, Tyler Foone.
You say it like it's inevitable. Like all you have to say is his name, and I should just automatically agree that he can't be salvaged.
Because that is 100% the case, dumbass. Besides, even if you're right, even if he plays nice and doesn't try to get in the ocean and kill everyone, he's still an ass. You want to hang out with him every day?
All right, yeah, he can be abrasive. You've never seen anything but that, probably because we were beating the shit out of him. But see, that's the thing. There's good in him, Charlie. There's this softer side to him that you haven't ever seen.
Oh, trust me, Jackson, nothing about Foone is soft when he's talking to me.
I'd almost forgotten about that factor, the way he used to look at her, the things he'd say. Memory was almost enough to eclipse my forgiveness on its own. You could handle him.
But you'd be all right with that. With him hitting on me and ogling me 24/7, biding his time for the moment where he thinks he can catch me off guard.
Of course not, okay? I'd kill him, but it's irrelevant. He wouldn't. He wouldn't even look at you sideways. I'm sure of it. Not anymore.
How could you possibly be sure of that?
I ran my fingers through my hair, locking them behind my neck. He told me today I was the closest thing he's ever had to a friend.
Jesus Christ, you fucking dimwit. He's playing you. He knows precisely what it takes to get into your...
She faltered off, frozen for a moment as the startling revelation brushed through her mind.
Wait.
She stood up, paced away from me, probably considered grouping out of the room to avoid hearing the answer to the question she was about to ask.
No, you. Why does that matter, Jackson?
She spun around abruptly and stared at me, icy blue eyes filled with hurt and anger all at once.
Why does being your best friend mean that he wouldn't try anything with me?
Charlie.
You didn't.
I didn't, but he figured it out on his own.
Oh my God, Jackson. Holy fuck. We haven't even told Sydney.
I know. Charlie, listen to me.
And you told Foone? Jackson, seriously, what the fuck? How could you betray me like this?
Oh, come on. It's not like that. I promise I didn't tell him. He just guessed.
How in the fuck did he guess? What did you do to make him guess that?
He made some comment about you the very first day, and I told him he wasn't allowed to even say your name. Then he asked me if we were sleeping together, and I couldn't, lie convincingly enough to make him believe it. He's exceptionally good at reading people, me especially, but I beat the hell out of him. After that, I pulled out half of his tubes, I slammed him against the glass. He's respected the rule ever since. He almost never talks about you.
Almost never?
She folded her arms, the hurt in her eyes replaced entirely by blistering fury. Well, okay, look, he never mentions you, but I've brought it up once or twice. When I needed somewhere to vent or something, he just listens really well, and...
My ever-loving fuck, this cannot be happening.
She interlaced her fingers over her locks and spun away from me in exasperated disbelief. It's not a big deal, Charlie.
Oh, it's not?
She snapped her eye contact back to me. I held firm. No, it's like writing it on a piece of paper and burying it in the woods or whispering it into an empty room. No one talks to Tyler but me. No one will hear about it except me. And I'm sorry that I didn't tell you right away when he guessed. I should have. That was stupid, but it's not worth getting so angry over, and we're getting distracted from my point.
And your point is?
That I forgive him, that I see good in him, and maybe I want to give him a shot.
Fine. If you've made up your mind, then pass him, JT. Hell, I'd have done it weeks ago just to save me the conversation, so congrats on the patience. But if you're doing it with some sort of hope that somewhere down the line he'll be rehabilitated and initiated into Beam, quell your optimism, because I will never sign off on a shitbag murderer like Foone, no matter how good of a therapist he is for you, no matter how charming and tragic his backstory is. He's an asshole, and he's a killer.
Yeah, that's fair. We all know damn well anyone who's ever killed somebody's automatically disposable garbage completely beyond reproach, right? She froze in place again, blinking at me, slowly trying to find the perfect balance between shock and rage before she spoke, but wound up leaning a bit heavily toward the rage.
Excuse me.
I'm just saying.
Did you seriously just compare me to Foone?
Charlie, that's not what I... No, you know what? Yeah, I did. Discounting Tyler's shot at atonement just because he's a murderer isn't fair.
It's not?
And we, of all people, should know better than to be that judgmental. I know it's not exactly the same, but still, you and he have a lot more in common than you'll ever want to admit.
Wow. You just... I think we're good here. I don't even feel like I need to say anything. That's how stupid you sound. It's just, it's self-evident, actually.
It wasn't intended to be a personal attack, Charlie. I'm just saying, sometimes circumstances are more complicated than labeling someone a murderer and casting it aside. From experience, you should understand that complexity.
I mean, obviously, I'm not fucking you tonight. After you call me Tyler, there's no way I'm gonna sleep with you, so good job there, buddy, but I guess it doesn't matter because, we cuddled a few nights ago. That apparently means we're not fighting.
You know what? Fuck you. Okay, that's abusive. You don't get to do that. You can't just say something like that.
Like what?
You can't just act like withholding sex from me is gonna motivate me to do whatever you want and think whatever you want. Like I'm so helpless and weak-minded that the thought of not being with you for a single night will make me back down from my perfectly justified point and grant you a victory. As if all you have to do is deny me and I'll conform to your every waking desire, like my principles are less important to me than having sex with you. Get over yourself, honestly.
Yeah? Well, shit. There was almost enough conviction in that speech to persuade me it was true, Jackson, but maybe next time it'd be more believable you not wanting to fuck me if you weren't telekinetically petting me the entire time you were talking.
Oh, right, that's fair too. Use that against me. Totally mature. I told you, I don't even control it.
Stop doing it right now. I dare you. Stop. You can't. Why don't you get over me, Jackson? Even when you're mad at me, you just stroke and stroke.
Damn it, Charlie, you can't discount everything.
Still doing it.
I clamorously flipped the coffee table. Just because I'm in love with you? doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be pissed at you to the point where I don't want to have sex with you. And time stood still. At first, I hadn't even realized I'd said it, but as she stared at me with her icy blue eyes, dilated to the size of pancakes, letting out a single befuddled burst of a laugh to accompany her quizzical smirk, I combed through my outburst again. Dear Lord, did I really say it like this, angry in the middle of a fight? Stuff it back, undo. I didn't mean that.
Which part?
Give me a mulligan. Let me rephrase. Charlie, please don't leave.
I'm not going anywhere.
She sat down on the couch next to me, fiendishly grinning.
And take your sweet time.
I'm not in... I mean, I don't... I didn't mean to say that I... Because obviously, right? You know?
Yeah, this is a very convincing mulligan, JT.
I chose to ignore her cavalier, dismissive cruelty because I think if I would have paused to consider it, I would have cried, or maybe blew up the building. It's just a figure of speech, I went with, nervously biting the inside of my lip. People say it all the time, I'm in love with this sandwich. It doesn't really mean that...
Yeah, sure, of course. People use it like that, but is that how you were using it?
Yes.
Then say the words. Say you're not in love with me, come on.
Was she taunting me? Was this funny to her? My deepest, truest feelings ripped from my lips, tossed out onto display before I was ready to express them? Was it all just some hilarious joke? I was furious. Listen, I know you think this is hysterical, and I know you tend to toe the line of sociopathic lack of human empathy, but even for you, just considering our years of friendship, never mind the last 18 months of whatever the fuck this has been, even for you, you're being incredibly...
I'm in love with you, Jaxon.
Mean? I finished definitively. She vigorously shook her head.
I'm not being mean. I'm not making fun of you. I'm not humoring you. And I'm not lying. I promise. It's the honest to God's truth. I'm in love with you.
I waited forever for her to start laughing at the joke, but instead she just watched me watching her, a subtle pink hue splashing onto her face as she tried her best to calibrate her smile. Too much, I'd think she was joking. Not enough, I'd think she was insincere. But this one, like everything else about Charlie, was perfect. Could it possibly just be true? No complicated ulterior motives, no lies to save me humiliation, just a face value truth. Charlie was in love with me. I made a noise, like an airy, disbelieving chuckle mixed with a relieved half-sigh, half-sob, focusing on my hands ringing in my lap, but then I glanced up at her, cocking an eyebrow. Seriously? She rolled her eyes, sighed exasperatedly.
Yes, seriously, why would I lie? Sociopathic lack of empathy considered, I'm not that cruel. I am 100% blindingly, life-alteringly, unashamedly, terrifyingly in love with you. What the fuck else do I have to say to convince you? Tell me, I'll say it. You know I'm bad at coming up with that kind of shit by myself. Here, how's this? I love you more than I hate Howie.
She slid down on the couch until our bodies touched. We simultaneously leaned forward, resting our elbows on our thighs and holding our chins, staring blankly ahead. I still wasn't sure I believed it. Everything I ever wanted coming down at me so quickly. I turned my head to face her, and then she did the same. How long? Like since when? When did you figure it out?
The first time I thought it was the day I shot Peter instead of doing the commercial, and then we got into a big argument about how you didn't even try to be heroic anymore. You remember that?
That was months ago, Charlie. All that wasted time. You've been in love with me for that long?
Oh no, that's just when I first realized it. Honestly, I think I fell in love with you when you died. Remember when Lindsay Flair shot you and we all thought you were dead for a week? I think that was it for me. It just took me until more recently to recognize, what happened.
Jesus, that was almost 3 years ago. Why didn't you say anything?
I did, sort of. I'm the one who got this whole thing rolling, right? Besides, I've been waiting around for you to say the actual words first because I figured that sort of thing would be important to a schmuck like you. It only took you a year and a half of screwing and a shouting match to draw it out of you by accident, and then you did try to wiggle out of it, you coward. I'm not sure it even counts, honestly.
She prodded me in the chest, leaning me back into the couch, then rested her head on my lap, staring up at me. I wrapped one arm across her, with the other I grabbed a lock, started weaving it between my fingers the way I'd seen her do 100 times. And even though I had no way of knowing this because I still couldn't feel when I did it, I had a sinking suspicion by the way she was breathing and subtly smiling. I was doing that eye-teaking thing at some unfathomably intense level. I'm in love with you, Charlie.
Good. Was that so hard?
She grabbed my hand, her 4 fingers fitting perfectly between my 5. If I gave it any real consideration, I'd feel guilty that Foone was downstairs toiling in self-loathing while I was so blissfully entranced in this perfect moment instead. Self-loathing was kind of my thing, but I gladly traded in. I still didn't know what to do with him. Talking to Charlie only made me more conflicted, and maybe I was losing touch with my humanity, my morality. Maybe there were so many shades of gray all around me that they'd all just blurred together and I couldn't distinguish Foone from any other sinner. It might have been a real problem if I lent it a single bit of thought, but I couldn't have been bothered. It was as far from my mind as possible. Charlie and I were in love. This beautiful distraction. So, what do we do now?
Well, I have a pretty good idea of what we should do, except I just said we weren't going to. But hey, I'll be willing to forgive you for comparing me to a deranged mass-murdering bastard if you'd be willing to set aside all of this prideful bluster about you possessing a single fragment of capacity to resist my fiendish charms and blistering hot body. Deal?
Sure, Charlie. I've never attempted, nor will I ever attempt, to apply a description to those 15 minutes of my life. To do so, just to even attempt to construct a single fitting word to lend clarity or explanation to those 15 minutes would be to cheapen them, to encage them, because nothing would do it justice. Any attempt to describe it would fall so perilously short, it would be a tragedy. But I will say that there were times ahead where I would be so beaten and wrecked, so smashed against the bottom of the lowest well of solitude and defeat, the only salvation I could cling to in order to escape from reality were those 15 minutes. And they were so insanely perfect that every single time I did so, it worked. I accepted every wretched moment of my life up to that point and all of the ungodly events yet to come, all of it in exchange for just those 15 minutes. There did not exist a bad, or even a set of bads collectively to outweigh the good that we made that day. And I don't think if left to our own devices, it ever would have stopped.
Oh, fuck.
What? What's wrong?
Oh my.
Fuck.
Shit. Hold on, Sydney. But then the door to my apartment flew open, and a large, surprised purple man stormed inside.
Thank you for listening to the Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. For any comments or concerns, email me, beamchronicles@gmail.com, especially if you'd be interested in an art collab. For example, if you want to email me to tell me that infrared would not work underwater, and that the previous chapter didn't make any scientific sense, you definitely can. I can't wait to hear that stuff. Social media? Still nothing, but just in case I ever figure out how to generate engagement, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. All music and sound effects were sourced from the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for the show, and thanks again for listening.